Republicans. So it's the lowest for any incumbent in the modern era of polling at this point. Now we're more than, well, I think by my count, and don't trust it, but I think we're 547 days out from Election Day. But in this poll, his support among black voters has dropped from 82% to 52%. That's a 30-point plunge. In head-to-head matchups, Trump has a 7-point lead, 45-38. 18% still undecided should we have a matchup. DeSantis has a 5-point lead, 42-37. So is this an outlier poll? Or is this the loudest wake-up call the White House has received since the president has entered office, certainly since he announced his re-election campaign? David Dulio is the professor of political science and director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, and we welcome into the house this afternoon. Hi, David.
Hi, Guy. Thanks for having me.
So, brutal, devastating. The media's using a lot of their favorite adjectives here, and not just Fox. There is a lot of hype around this poll. Is it as devastating for Democrats as they would have us believe? How should this be processed?
Well, they certainly need to look at it with great seriousness, right? Even if the poll is a little, sort of underestimating the president by a little bit in terms of job approval, if it's 38 or 39, it's still pretty bad. So, and it's certainly nothing to be excited about. They are going to have to deal with the fact that a sizable chunk of the American public looks at President Biden with great skepticism. I think the worst news for the administration is yet to come. I think these poll numbers are going to get worse before they get better. As Title 42 ends this week, right, and we see a mass influx of migration across the border in Texas and other parts of the southern border. So I think that is going to be a huge story in the next couple of weeks, and I think that's going to just continue to drive those poll numbers down. Well, and especially since they keep sending Secretary Mayorkas out there to say the border is closed, the border is not open, and yet we're averaging 8,500 illegal entries and engagements a day, with between 35,000 and 40,000 on the other side of the Rio Grande waiting for this expiration date, and some not waiting at all. And yet they keep repeating this, even though it's demonstrably not true. Well, I think that very oftentimes, whether it's politicians or politicos or commentators or whomever, they are very critical of the American public in terms of their knowledge of politics or their interest in politics. And there's something to that. But the American people are pretty good BS detectors. And they can discern what is real from what is not, just by using their common sense, right? And I think a lot of Americans are in that boat when it comes to how this issue of immigration and what's happening on the southern border is going to be portrayed. Well, and it's a very exploitable issue, too, and it's something that people can see with their eyes. I heard Henry Cuellar speaking today. He said, what we really need video of is not people crossing. We need pictures of them being sent home. And those are the pictures you never see in the process, so that the message gets to Venezuela and Honduras that you will be sent home. And even when Title 42 was in force, and we sent 2 million back, somehow that message didn't get through. Right, and it really is about perception, right? And if folks, whether it's on this side of the border or folks on the other side of the border, perceive something, the status of the border, whether it's quote unquote open or not, really goes a long way in telling them what's happening, right? I mean, people look at the pictures and look at the stories that are coming out of the southern states, and they are perceiving those words that Secretary Mayorkas uses as incorrect. So we have heard the narrative from Democrats, and they've been hanging on to this like a holy chalice, and that is, in a head-to-head rematch, the president's sure to win because we'll always win a repeat of 2020. This poll would suggest not only is that not true,
that if Trump isn't in the race and that Biden takes his spot, DeSantis takes his spot, he still loses. Will this change their thinking about whether or not a challenger should enter the race?
Well, we've heard folks like Donna Brazile on the Democratic side start to sound the alarm bells over the president's standing in the polls, certainly, and his election chances. Right? I think she called this poll or another one.
I have her right. Donna is right here.
Oh.
Let's hear from Donna Brazile. This is how she put the ABC numbers into context. Cut one.
It's sobering in the sense, George, that the coalition that elected Joe Biden, with the historic numbers that we saw in 2020, that coalition right now is fragmented. That should concern them.
And Mark Penn said basically the same thing. If you're in the White House right now, you should be really looking at your options, because this is not a pretty picture. If inflation, though, should abate further, if they could get close to that 2% mark, and unemployment remains low, and the jobs market has been on fire, if his economic numbers improve, can he turn that approval number around, or is it really now about his age, and that's something he can't change, and the perception of mental acuity?
Put in the pot and stirred up together, right? And usually we would say that yes, if the economic indicators improve, the president's job approval will improve. That has those two data series have tracked together for decades. But it's an interesting economic context right now where you do have high inflation but low unemployment. One of the things that is about to enter the conversation, I think, in the next couple months is whether or not we are in a recession, or whether we're going to go into a mild recession. Mm-hmm. You remember a year or so ago, we had two consecutive quarters of negative economic growth, which has sort of been the historical benchmark for whether or not we're in a recession. But the White House came out and said, "Oh, no, we're not. This is there's much more to the definition of a recession." Well, it looks like maybe at the end of the year we're going to meet those definition points. So if we enter a recession, that's going to put a bigger hit on the president's job numbers. And I think that's going to be, again, it may get worse before it gets better for the White House.
Before I let you go, this wasn't necessarily a great poll for former President Trump either. We've got, of the same group that gives him head-to-head wins against Biden, 55% of them think he should be indicted for election denial issues, Mar-a-Lago documents, and January 6th. That's only a third found him trustworthy and honest. If you are a would-be challenger or a Tim Scott or a Nikki Haley, do you take comfort in those numbers, or are you just merely astonished that he continues to poll as strongly as he does?
I think if you're Nikki Haley or Tim Scott or Ron DeSantis or any of the others, I think you have to look at that with some positivity, right, and say, maybe here's my chance. I think he's still the odds-on favorite to be the Republican nominee. And a Trump-Biden rematch would really disappoint a whole bunch of Americans. I think that the country's looking for other and new options, to be quite frank.
Yeah, we know that very quickly, Kevin McCarthy is going to go into a budget discussion, the debt limit discussion with the president tomorrow. In this poll, 39% said that they would blame Republicans if there's a default. 36% say they would blame Biden. Is that still a very changeable number, or should both sides consider that a flashing yellow light?
I think more the latter, but I think Republicans have done a poor job messaging about the bill that they have passed through the House of Representatives. If they did a little better on that, I think they'd see their numbers improve.
Or even acknowledging that they've already raised the debt, right? I mean, they've already voted, they've already done it, and we're still waiting for the Biden team to even talk about talking.
Bingo.
Yep. We'll see what happens tomorrow. David, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Guy. Appreciate it.
Good discussion. We appreciate